Fellow defenders, sysadmins, listen up. I'm issuing a critical Code Ninja security advisory right now. We've got a newly disclosed zero-day level threat targeting NGINX infrastructure. It's designated as CVE-2026-42934. We're jumping straight into this explainer because, frankly, time is absolutely of the essence here. This is a formal, coordinated vulnerability disclosure, and my objective is simple: to equip you with the exact, unfiltered technical intel you need to secure your exposed data planes immediately. We're going to meticulously break down the exploitation chain, understand exactly how this payload is delivered, and then we are forcing a perimeter lockdown. Let's get to work. So first up, let's establish the threat metric. The National Vulnerability Database, alongside F5 Networks, just stamped this vulnerability with a CVSS version 4.0 score of 6.3 and a legacy version 3.1 score of 4.8. Now, formally, this categorizes the threat as medium, but listen to me. Do not let that rating lull you into a false sense of security, and definitely don't shove this to the bottom of your patching queue. A medium score often just implies a complex attack path, but once an attacker finds that path, your data plane is the crown jewel. This vulnerability strikes directly at that data plane, and for unpatched, specifically configured environments, the impact is severe and immediate. Well, what exactly are we dealing with under the hood here? This is classified as a CVE-125. That's an out-of-bounds read. Specifically, we're looking at a heap buffer overread located deep within the NGINX NGX_HTTP charset module. Think of this module like the engine responsible for translating character encodings on the fly. Now, if your server is set up with a specific, fragile chain of directives, remote attackers can send maliciously crafted requests that force the NGINX worker process to read far beyond its allocated memory buffer. It asks for a tiny chunk of data, but the flaw causes the system to hand over adjacent memory chunks it was literally never supposed to access. And here is the absolute most critical part. There is no authentication required for this, at all. To truly grasp the urgency of this, let's track the disclosure timeline. This intelligence is moving incredibly fast, and the window between disclosure and active weaponization is shrinking by the minute. On May 13th, the CVE was officially published by F5 Networks and handed over to the NVD for enrichment. Barely 24 hours later, on May 14th, Canonical placed over a decade of Ubuntu LTS distributions under an active needs evaluation status. They recognized the massive potential footprint right away. By May 15th, F5 had already updated their advisory with highly refined patching intel. We're operating in a real-time, rapidly escalating threat landscape, guys, where every single hour counts. Okay, before we initiate the technical deep dive and I give you the exact mitigation protocols, we need to make sure our secure comms link is locked in. If you're responsible for defending network infrastructure, firewalls, or cloud environments, you absolutely need real-time critical security intel. So hit the subscribe button for CyberTech79 right now and enable your notifications. Look, in our line of work, missing a broadcast like this isn't just a minor inconvenience, it's a full-scale breach waiting to happen. Next, we need to follow standard operating procedure. I need a formal acknowledgement of receipt for this advisory. Leave a like on this explainer as your network ACK. It's a simple action, but it tells me the signal is successfully cutting through the noise, bypassing the algorithm, and actually reaching the defenders on the front lines who need this intel the most. Finally, for our comms check, I need a census from the field. Jump into the comments below and report your current infrastructure status right now. Are you patched or vulnerable? We practice collective defense here. By reporting your status, you're actively helping the white hat community gauge the global blast radius of this vulnerability. It allows us to track the real-world adoption rate of the mitigations we're about to discuss. Section 1. Blast radius. Impact in affected infrastructure. Okay, so the precision required for this exploit is exactly why edge case configurations are so incredibly dangerous. Your systems are only vulnerable if you're running a highly specific tandem configuration in your nginx.conf file. An attacker needs you to be using the charset, source_charset, and charset map directives, all combined with a proxy pass directive where buffering is actively disabled, meaning proxy_buffering is explicitly set to off. See, when buffering is disabled, NGINX handles the data stream directly and synchronously. Combine that with the character mapping translation, and it creates the exact memory friction needed to trigger that out-of-bounds read we talked about. If these specific stars align in your config, your perimeter is completely exposed. So what actually happens if the exploit is triggered against that configuration? Fortunately, there's no control plane exposure here. Attackers can't just take over your base operating system. The blast radius is strictly restricted to the data plane. However, that data plane impact is twofold, and it's highly destructive. First, memory disclosure. The attacker can force a limited leak of sensitive memory contents that just happen to be traversing the server at that exact moment. We're talking session cookies, JWTs, API keys, or even plaintext PII bleeding out. Second, availability drop. The attack can fatally crash the NGINX worker process. An abrupt restart effectively causes a targeted denial of service, dropping active user sessions and entirely disrupting your service continuity. Let's trace this across the vulnerable binaries. NGINX Open Source is exposed across a massive swath of versions, literally from version 1.0.0 all the way through 1.30.0. For enterprise environments, NGINX Plus is vulnerable from releases R32 through R36. But the cascade doesn't stop at the base web server software. Dependent ecosystems are totally caught in the crossfire here. This includes the F5 web application firewall for NGINX versions 5.9.0 to 5.12.1. It also directly impacts the NGINX Ingress Controller for Kubernetes and the NGINX Instance Manager used for fleet management. It's a wide net. And the blast radius extends deeply into the base operating system layer itself. Sysadmins take strict note of this. Canonical is currently evaluating the NGINX package risk across their Ubuntu long-term support distributions, and I mean all of them. They're analyzing exposure from Ubuntu 14.04 Trusty Tar, which, let's be real, is a distro that is over a decade old and likely sitting forgotten in server rack somewhere, straight through to the brand new 26.04 Resolute release. If you run NGINX on Ubuntu, you need to consider your environment under active threat assessment right now. Section 2. The protocol, tactical patching and mitigation. Now, if you're in a mission-critical production environment and you absolutely cannot take the servers offline to patch right this very second, here is your zero downtime mitigation protocol. Step 1, audit your nginx.conf and virtual host files immediately for that prerequisite chain. Step 2, NGINX configurations that do not actively recode a UTF-8 response through charset_map are not affected. So if at all possible, safely remove or alter that charset_map routing logic. Step 3, simply turn proxy buffering back on. By re-enabling buffering, you fundamentally change how NGINX handles the memory allocation for the incoming stream. Breaking just one single link in that tandem configuration neutralizes the attack vector completely. But remember, configuration mitigation is really just a band-aid. Here's the ultimate remediation directive. You must upgrade to the vendor-patched binaries to permanently secure your perimeter. For NGINX Open Source, you need to upgrade immediately to version 1.30.1 or the mainline 1.31.0. If you're running the Enterprise NGINX Plus, you gotta apply the specific patches for R36P4 or R32P6, or just upgrade your entire deployment to version 37.0.0. For F5 WAF users, jump to version 5.13.0. Schedule those maintenance windows and deploy these fixes as soon as humanly possible. Section 3. Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure, the Code and Ethics. We push these advisories so hard because of coordinated vulnerability disclosure. This is the white hat code. We disclose these flaws publicly and thoroughly to force vendors to issue fixes and to ensure you have the transparency required to protect your systems before adversaries weaponize the exploit at scale. And on that note, we've really got to commend the security researchers who did the heavy lifting here. F5 officially acknowledges David Carlier and Zhenpeng, who goes by Depth First. They discovered this highly complex memory flaw and adhered strictly to ethical disclosure standards. They reported it quietly to the vendor, gave them the necessary time to develop the patches without tipping off threat actors, and then facilitated this public warning. This right here, this is exactly how the good guys win. And that concludes this Code Ninja Security Advisory. You have your real-time intel, you've got your zero downtime mitigation steps, and you have your hard patching targets. Audit your configurations tonight. Do not leave your data plane exposed to a completely preventable memory leak. Execute the protocol, patch your binaries, and as always, stay secure.